If Ivanka weren't my daughter, perhaps I'd be dating her, you know? Stop it. It's so strange. Well, you're known for saying controversial things, Mr. Trump. Who are you, Woody Allen? Want to know more about you both? Let's play a quick game called Fave 5. I'll ask a question. Ivanka, you answer first, then your father. Ivanka, what's your favorite thing you share with your dad? Either real estate or golf. And you, Donald, about your daughter? Well, I was going to say something, but I can't really share that here. At that moment, Jasmine Crockett quietly stood during the hearing, holding documents no one had anticipated. What she introduced caught the room off guard. The atmosphere shifted instantly. Conversation stopped, and the room fell into a deep silence, the kind that suggests something significant is about to unfold, even if no one is sure what. It was a Tuesday morning in Washington, D.C. The hearing had been expected to proceed routinely, focusing on ethics and public office. Cameras from C-SPAN were recording, but few expected anything remarkable. Ivanka Trump had agreed to appear voluntarily, which was uncommon given her limited appearances on Capitol Hill. She arrived shortly before 9 a.m., dressed in a navy suit, her expression composed and neutral. She was there to speak about the relaunch of the Trump Foundation under a new name. Jasmine Crockett had remained quiet up to that point. Sitting at the far end of the semicircle, she reviewed a folder with steady focus. Her expression revealed little. Occasionally, she tapped her pen against the desk in a slow, measured rhythm, as if preparing for a specific moment. Most attention in the room was directed elsewhere, including toward Chairman Hal Bridge, a reserved figure from Oklahoma. Clearing his throat, the chairman nodded toward Ivanka. "You may begin," he said. Ivanka leaned forward, adjusted the microphone, and started her prepared remarks. Her tone was calm and deliberate. "Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I'm here today as a private citizen." She spoke about impact, legacy, and responsible philanthropy. Some lawmakers listened, while others glanced down at their phones. Jasmine, however, remained attentive. About 20 minutes into the statement, as Ivanka turned to her next page, Jasmine raised her hand. "Mr. Chairman," she said. The chairman paused. "Miss Crockett, we will allow the statement to conclude." "I won't take long," Jasmine replied. "But in the interest of time, the committee should be aware of certain undisclosed connections relevant to today's discussion." Ivanka paused briefly. The chairman hesitated, then nodded. "Proceed." Jasmine stood, composed and steady. "I'd like to submit for the record a series of encrypted messages recovered from a private server linked to communications between 2018 and 2021, she said. These messages, along with recently declassified travel logs, raise questions about whether Ivanka Trump may have influenced federal policy decisions while maintaining a relationship with the former president that extended beyond formal professional boundaries. The tone in the room shifted noticeably. A quiet murmur came from the press section. Ivanka remained still for a moment, then adjusted her posture, her expression tightening slightly. Jasmine held up printed message headers. These communications suggest frequent off-record meetings, sometimes overlapping with discussions related to education funding, healthcare policy, and foreign contracts. These meetings do not appear in official White House logs, yet both Ivanka Trump and her father were reportedly present. A wave of reaction moved through the room. People began sending messages on their phones. A member of Ivanka's team leaned in to speak with her. The chairman spoke firmly. "Representative Crockett, are you alleging misconduct?" "I am presenting documented communications," Jasmine replied. "The committee and the public can review and interpret them." Ivanka responded, her tone sharper. "This is not accurate. Would you like to address it under oath?" Jasmine asked, turning slightly toward her. "I've already stated my position," Ivanka replied. "This interpretation is misleading." That exchange altered the dynamic in the room. Cameras shifted focus. The chairman called for order, but the hearing had clearly moved beyond routine discussion. Jasmine then reached for a second folder. Without raising her voice, she placed it on the desk. The room remained focused on her. "Representative Crockett, please remain on topic," the chairman said. "This is directly related to ethics," Jasmine answered calmly. In the press area, reporters began typing quickly. Staff members exchanged quiet remarks. One aide stepped out, speaking into a phone. Jasmine removed a printed document from the folder and held it up. "This message is dated July 17, 2019, just days before a policy adjustment involving charter school funding," she said. The message reads, "Let's meet early. He prefers no one else present. Same location." It works better privately. A few quiet reactions could be heard. Jasmine continued, this message was sent from an account associated with Ivanka Trump to a contact linked with internal networks. Travel records indicate she was in Milwaukee that morning, where a closed-door fundraiser took place. There is no public record of this specific meeting. Ivanka straightened in her seat. That interpretation lacks context, she said. You are assigning meaning without full information. I am presenting the text as written, Jasmine replied. The question is why certain policy changes followed soon after these meetings. Ivanka folded her arms. Situations like this discourage serious individuals from participating in public service, she said. It creates unnecessary controversy. That's not an accusation, Miss Trump, Jasmine said. It's a question and it hasn't been answered. A Republican representative, Caleb Strickland of Missouri, leaned toward his microphone. Mr. Chairman, are we really entertaining claims that sound like speculation? He asked. Jasmine tilted her head slightly. Congressman, if verified White House travel logs are being dismissed, I'd like that noted on record. Caleb muttered something under his breath but did not continue. Jasmine went on. There's more. On March 3, 2022, just days before an $89 million federal contract was awarded to a New York consulting firm later linked to the Trump family, Ivanka arrived in Sacramento the night before. There is no official record of a meeting, but her father stayed at the same hotel. No security logs were filed, but a hotel staff member later reported restricted elevator access for only 2 individuals between 10 p.m. and 1 a.m. Ivanka's tone sharpened. Are you suggesting something inappropriate happened between me and my father? Jasmine remained calm. I'm pointing out that a sequence of decisions, financial movements, and off-the-record meetings appears to follow a consistent pattern. This is not personal. It's about accountability. The room fell quiet again. Jasmine reached into her folder one last time and held up a black and white photograph. This image was taken by a staff member. It shows Ivanka and Donald Trump leaving the rear entrance of a private estate in Naples, Florida. No formal reason was recorded. 2 weeks later, funding for regional FEMA services was reduced. The estate's owner, who leads a company that later received a federal subcontract, hosted them. The chairman seemed ready to speak but paused. Ivanka looked directly at the cameras. I will not be misrepresented like this. I came here in good faith. Then please respond to the questions, Jasmine said. The chairman raised his hand. Let's take a short recess. But it was already too late. Reporters were standing asking questions. Staff members moved quickly, trying to manage the situation, but the momentum had shifted. Inside the committee room, Jasmine stayed composed, seated and reviewing her notes. She did not react outwardly. She appeared prepared. Ivanka stepped into a side room with her legal advisor and aides. Raised voices could be heard through the walls. 10 minutes passed, then 15. When the chairman finally called the session back to order, Ivanka returned. Her posture was steady, but her expression had become more firm. She adjusted her microphone and faced Jasmine. I would like to respond to the earlier statements, she said, measured but controlled. I have never used my position to influence government decisions improperly. I have served my country and my family with integrity. These suggestions are inappropriate and do not reflect the standards of this chamber. Jasmine listened without reacting. Ivanka continued. Yes, I met with my father in private discussions. That was part of my role as a senior advisor. That alone is not unusual. But the records, Jasmine said gently. You were not on official logs because not every conversation is publicly recorded, Ivanka replied. And that is the concern, Jasmine said calmly. When access is private and the stakes are public, there is limited oversight. This is not about oversight, Ivanka responded. This feels like an attempt to discredit me publicly. Jasmine raised an eyebrow slightly. If it feels that way, that is your perspective. I am asking questions based on the materials presented. Members of the committee shifted in their seats. The tension extended beyond the 2 speakers and affected the entire panel. Chairman Halbridge spoke again. Ms. Trump, can you confirm or deny the authenticity of the communications submitted? I have not seen those materials before, Ivanka said. I will not comment on private documents that have not been verified. Jasmine leaned forward. So you are not denying that the meetings occurred? Ivanka paused. I am saying context matters. My father and I worked closely. Any interpretation beyond that is speculative. Speculative? Jasmine repeated quietly. Then perhaps a full review is appropriate. She looked toward the chairman. I request an independent review of the server data and travel logs submitted today, including subpoena authority. The panel reacted visibly. That is outside today's agenda, the chairman said. But it falls within the Ethics Committee's jurisdiction, Jasmine replied evenly. This is not about one individual. It reflects a broader pattern. Ignoring it may suggest that private influence over public decisions is acceptable. Is that the standard this committee wants to set? No one answered immediately. Ivanka shook her head. This appears to be an attempt to generate attention, she said. Or it may be part of the responsibility I was elected to carry out, Jasmine replied. Ensuring accountability regardless of who is involved. A quiet murmur spread across the room. Ivanka remained silent for a moment. The pause carried weight. Jasmine waited, then opened her final folder. This folder contained visual materials, color photographs, annotated screenshots, timestamps, and maps. The information required little explanation. I would like to submit additional exhibits for the record, Jasmine said. These include GPS metadata from federal flight logs, hotel staff shift records, and surveillance images from government facilities. One image drew immediate attention. It showed Ivanka stepping out of a side entrance of a hotel in Austin, Texas at 11:34 p.m., accompanied by a security detail not listed as part of her official team. Behind her, a man in a dark coat appeared focused on his phone. Metadata linked the timing to a private visit Donald Trump made to the same hotel during a lobbying dinner 2 nights before a major infrastructure bill was revised, benefiting contractors connected to the Trump organization. Jasmine did not elaborate further. This is not about proving a single false statement, she said. It is about showing how individuals in positions of influence may operate without sufficient transparency. That gap should be examined. Ivanka shifted slightly, pressing her lips together as cameras focused on her. Another image was presented. It showed Ivanka seated beside her father on a private jet in October 2020, with no press or official itinerary. Jasmine pointed to the timestamp and flight path. The plane had been rerouted midair to Charleston, West Virginia. During that same period, a federal prison contract was reassigned to a private vendor whose CEO had contributed to a political action committee supporting Donald Trump. Ivanka responded quickly. This presentation connects unrelated details and presents them as something they are not. Jasmine remained composed. Then helped clarify the connections. An aide handed Ivanka a note. She read it, folded it, and placed it beneath her papers. I will not engage with what appears to be a staged presentation, she said. These are selective interpretations of personal and professional interactions. Jasmine replied calmly, this is about patterns, timing, and influence. When events align repeatedly, it raises reasonable questions. Representative Dia Monroe, a moderate from Oregon, leaned forward. Are you indicating that Ivanka may have acted beyond her formal advisory role without appropriate oversight? Jasmine looked up. I am presenting materials that suggest that possibility. Monroe turned to the chairman. In that case, I support a formal review. Ivanka appeared taken aback. My role has always been structured and conducted within ethical boundaries, she said. Then that can be clarified through a review, Monroe replied. A pause followed. Ivanka looked toward her legal counsel, who spoke quietly to her. Chairman Halbridge cleared his throat. The committee will recess while we consider the next steps. No one moved immediately. Reporters remained in place. Live coverage numbers were rising, and discussion of the exhibits was already spreading online. Jasmine leaned forward once more before the session cut to recess coverage and spoke quietly, but clearly enough for the microphone. There is more, she said. But I will leave it to you to decide how much should be placed on record. When you introduce something like that, you can't control how people respond, Jasmine said quietly. By the time the committee reconvened, the atmosphere had clearly changed. Chairs moved less. Conversations had faded. No one was checking their phones. Everyone understood that the focus was now inside the room. Chairman Halbridge looked uneasy, not guilty, but aware that the situation had shifted beyond routine procedure. He cleared his throat. Before we continue, I remind all participants that this is a formal proceeding. We expect order and relevance to the agenda. Jasmine sat calmly, her hands folded on the desk. Ivanka appeared composed on the surface but avoided eye contact, including with Jasmine. Representative Monroe leaned toward her microphone. Mr. Chairman, I move to suspend the remainder of today's agenda to address the materials submitted by Representative Crockett. It was an unexpected move. Monroe was known for careful strategy, not direct confrontation. Still, something in the room had changed. The chairman exhaled. That would be highly irregular. So is the possibility of private communications influencing federal decisions without oversight, Monroe replied. A quiet wave of agreement moved across the panel. Members who had remained neutral earlier were now paying closer attention. Ivanka leaned forward. I would like to make a statement. Jasmine remained silent, allowing her to speak. I did not come here expecting disruption, Ivanka said. I came in good faith to discuss charitable work and public service. What I've encountered feels politically motivated. Jasmine raised an eyebrow slightly. Then let's focus on the details. Identify which dates are incorrect, which messages are not authentic, and which trips did not occur. Ivanka paused, then responded. I cannot discuss certain travel details in this setting. These were not classified, Jasmine replied. They were simply not included in public records. There is a difference. The chairman leaned forward. If an independent review is to happen, it will follow proper procedure. Jasmine nodded. Of course. I will prepare a formal motion. At that moment, another voice entered the discussion. Representative Leo Franco, a conservative from Arizona, spoke. Before this becomes procedural, I want to say something. He continued carefully. Regardless of where anyone stands, whether this is seen as excessive or necessary, we have allowed too many questions to go unexamined over the years. I am not confirming every detail presented, but I do believe the public deserves transparency, even when the questions are difficult. Ivanka remained still, though her foot tapped lightly under the table. Jasmine nodded. Thank you, Representative Franco. The chairman looked tired. The motion to suspend the agenda will be reviewed. We will take a 5-minute break. He struck the gavel and stepped away. As the room relaxed slightly, Jasmine stood and walked toward the exit. She did not rush or react. Ivanka watched her leave, her hand tightening under the desk. An aide spoke quietly to her, but she did not respond. Outside the chamber, reporters filled the hallway, calling out questions. Jasmine moved past them without stopping, heading toward the stairwell and avoiding cameras. She was not seeking attention, but attention had already found her. By mid-afternoon, clips of the hearing were widely shared. Short segments circulated across platforms, showing Jasmine presenting documents or holding up photographs. Longer versions included commentary from legal analysts, commentators, and former officials. One clip from October 2020 drew particular attention. It showed a late-night arrival of Donald Trump's motorcade at a building in Charleston. The footage was unclear, with poor lighting, but the timestamp aligned with the flight data Jasmine had referenced. A figure believed to be Ivanka stepped out briefly, surrounded by security, with no public audience or press presence. Online discussions began analyzing every detail. Around 4 p.m., a statement from Ivanka's representatives described the hearing as political and based on selective interpretation, reaffirming that she had acted with integrity. The statement, however, did not address specific details raised earlier. Jasmine did not speak publicly. Instead, her team released a detailed document to the committee press, including redacted flight logs and supporting metadata referenced during the hearing. Each item was time-stamped and sourced. Journalists who had initially overlooked the hearing began reviewing past records. Analysts on talk shows discussed both the evidence and Ivanka's responses. One observer noted that the issue was not only the claims themselves, but how they were being addressed. Inside the Capitol, Ivanka waited in a private lounge. Her aides remained quiet, their phones active with messages. She leaned toward her lawyer. What about the folder, the one with the Austin photo? That was not public. That came from someone with access. There was no immediate response. Ivanka looked down, considering the situation. It was becoming clear that the materials presented had been carefully assembled over time, possibly by someone with direct knowledge. Outside, her car arrived. She stood slowly. I'm not responding further until we understand the source, she said. Her lawyer replied, the source matters, but so does how this appears publicly. In Jasmine's office, the mood was steady. There were no public statements or press events. An assistant entered with additional documents, placing a new folder on the desk. While attention remained on the hearing, Jasmine appeared focused on what might come next. Meanwhile, Ivanka's advisors worked quickly, speaking with a communications strategist experienced in managing public narratives. We can issue statements from allies and frame this as politically driven, the strategist suggested. Ivanka looked toward the window. That approach may not work if the documents are not addressed directly. The goal is to raise doubt, the strategist replied. Even partial uncertainty can shift perception. Ivanka considered this. And if more information is released? Then a legal response may be necessary, the strategist said. Request disclosure of sources. If not provided, question credibility. If provided, it may discourage further leaks. Back in Jasmine's office, an assistant delivered a message. Congressional counsel wants to know how extensive this is. Jasmine responded, I will speak openly, not privately. Once information is public, it carries protection. She showed no intention of limiting the discussion. Later, as the hearing resumed, the room was less crowded. Representative Vincent Renner, a second-term Republican from Idaho known for staying out of the spotlight, entered quietly. As Chairman Halbridge attempted to return to the original agenda, Renner activated his microphone. Before we continue, he said calmly, I would like to revisit Representative Crockett's motion regarding a formal review of the submitted materials. I support moving forward with that process. The room fell silent. Ivanka turned toward him slowly, her expression shifting. Are you serious? She asked. Renner remained composed. This is not personal, Miss Trump. It is about process. You may view this as unfair, but if the information is incomplete or incorrect, a review will clarify that. Jasmine leaned slightly forward. Thank you, Representative Renner. I am not endorsing any conclusion, he added. I am supporting the need to examine the questions. Chairman Halbridge adjusted his tie. This committee is not a court. These are not criminal proceedings. Renner nodded. Understood. But if we do not examine matters involving potential influence and conduct, then we are not fulfilling our role. Again the room grew quiet. Not tense but reflective. We will schedule a vote later this week, the chairman said. By then the shift was already visible. News coverage began highlighting bipartisan interest in a review. It was not about agreement on conclusions but agreement on process. Ivanka remained still, gripping her pen. She leaned toward her aide. We need to understand how this reached him. Across the room, Jasmine made a brief note. She did not react outwardly. The focus had shifted. Members who once avoided engagement were now watching closely when she spoke. Representative Monroe glanced between Jasmine and Renner, giving a small nod. It was not alignment but recognition of the moment. Outside, watchdog groups began requesting records related to the dates discussed. Journalists reviewed archives, financial disclosures, and property records. Information was being examined from multiple angles. Inside the Capitol, the most noticeable change was not in the documents but in the tone. Committee members who had once remained distant were now engaged, listening carefully as the discussion continued. Staff members who had previously dismissed her were now approaching her for copies of materials she had not yet presented. The silence surrounding her began to fade. By the following morning, the story had taken over major news outlets. Channels that typically avoided political controversy were now describing the situation as significant and potentially far-reaching. It was no longer just about a single hearing. It was about what had been introduced and how it was being addressed. Ivanka's team moved quickly to manage the response. They released a pre-recorded interview with a supportive morning show host, focusing on her foundation work in an effort to shift attention. However, many viewers remained focused on unanswered questions. Online discussions reflected this shift. Questions appeared repeatedly. What about the reported hotel meetings? Why were certain travel logs not addressed directly? Screenshots from the hearing circulated widely, each highlighting specific moments that drew attention. At the same time, Jasmine did not speak publicly. She avoided social media and declined interviews. Instead, she allowed the information already presented to stand on its own. That decision increased public curiosity. Her silence became part of the conversation. Back in her Fort Worth office, her team gathered early. Many had worked through the night. Phones rang continuously. Emails increased rapidly, coming from voters, observers, and individuals claiming to have additional information. Among them were messages from former White House aides offering details they considered relevant. Jasmine entered with a calm focus, holding a cup of coffee. Let it continue, she told her team. We are not here to follow attention. We are here to follow facts. By midday in Washington, some Republican committee members who had remained quiet began holding private discussions. Their concerns were not necessarily about assigning responsibility, but about the growing uncertainty surrounding the situation. Donors and stakeholders were paying attention, and that attention mattered. Representative Renner was asked privately to clarify his earlier remarks. He did not change his position. The questions raised are valid, he said. If that creates concern, then it is worth examining why. Shortly after, the Oversight Subcommittee released a brief statement. A preliminary review of the materials presented by Representative Crockett is underway. Additional information will be provided as appropriate. That single update marked an important shift. The discussion had moved beyond headlines and into a formal review process. Ivanka canceled 2 scheduled public appearances, including a press event in Baltimore. Reports began to circulate about private discussions taking place within her circle, though no official confirmation was provided.